Hi, this is Becky Gromlich with the Watercolor Classroom. Today I'm going to show you how to paint a yellow flower. I'm going to start with Azo Yellow. You want to make sure your brush is all the way clean because it's easy to contaminate this color and it looks greenish very quickly. I have a reference photo that I'm going by. I'm using a Da Vinci Casanillo No. 2 quill brush. These quill brushes hold a lot of water and make it easy to blend colors together in a wash. And I'm going to get into some of the golder colors and come all the way down with that. Dipping my brush, drying it off, and just softening this edge. And then I'm going to get a little bit of rust on my palette and mix it with a tiny bit of blue. I'm using ultramarine blue so that I have a brown. I don't want it super brown against that yellow. I want it to be a rust brown. And this edge down here is quite a bit darker than up there. And it goes into a little bit more rust as it goes up. Drying off my brush, spreading that out, softening that edge. Now some of this darker part comes up higher. And I think, I do need to get into a little bit of the browns in there or it's gonna look like a very orange flower instead of yellow. But I want to go light because I don't want the petal to look brown. I want it to look yellow. Softening this top edge. And there we're starting to have the look of the petal being round. I don't usually start on the very frontmost petal. I usually start further back. I have a little bit of color right here. Not very much. Enough to help give the petal some curve. This is one of my most yellow petals. Very pretty. Then a little gamboge down here. Tiniest bit of rust at this edge. And then gamboge in for the rest of the shading. When you go back over a spot like this, you do need to do the whole thing basically, or otherwise you're going to get blooms. So I'm not leaving any of the totally white spots white. Some of that happened when I blew it up and printed it, and so it wasn't in the original photo, and they look a little bit washed out to me. One of the things to be careful about when you're doing a light painting, a white flower or pale yellow or pale pink, is that you don't get your pencil lines too dark. I'm going to make a little bit of a mix of these two yellows just to make the transfer of colors easier. Goes all the way over to there. Down into here a little bit. And I'm doing this while it's I'm not worrying about my edges too much. Green is going to go back there. This yellow lifts fairly easily. And so I'm not stressing over that. Now this needs to go all the way back there, but this is still wet, so I'm going to just give it a minute. Okay, now when you look at this and this together, this just doesn't look 3D the way that does. If you're having trouble telling when something's dark and not dark enough, then these tools are just a great way to do it. You hold it over here and, okay, those are about the same darkness. It's only way down here that I just don't have it dark enough to get that curve in there. And that's pretty close too. But again, way down here I don't have it. So it's that bottom curve that I'm missing, and that might be all that needs to be changed. And that could go a little darker too. It's not too bad though. Okay, on with the greens. So some of these leaves are pretty blurred on here. And of course our painting is a lot smaller. So the first thing I'm actually going to do on this one is the leaves, is the background. And the reason is because I want that to be blurred. And so I'm going to make it wet, and I'm going to put wet on wet in there. Now, depending on how quick of a worker you are, you might not want to get 3 areas wet at once. You might just want to do 1 area at a time. And for this, I'm using sap green, hooker's green. I'm putting them on my palette. And then my favorite green for making these brighter, lighter, bright colors up here is Permanent Green Pale. It's a bright spring green. And then of course I'll be using the yellow as well. And I'm dropping in some color. Being careful around the edges. And I'm going to sort of get the shapes of some leaves in there. Sometimes it's handy to have 2 colors on your brush. I'm actually going to put some pretty pale stuff in there. And then I'm going to put some more just pure hookers to give the dark back. Then I'm going to put some plain hookers to give that dark background. So same thing, putting quite a bit of hookers on here. And then I'm going to get some of these other colors. Some sap green. A little bit of this brighter green. I want to give something of the impression of a leafy look back there. I'm going to start in with some hooker green, and this Right here is actually darker than hooker green. Not much. But I'm going to get a skinnier brush for this. This is got a really great point on it. It's a Princeton Round Aqua Elite. And it has an amazing point. As you can see, it slows things down pretty dramatically to use that fine of a point. So I'm going to continue with this other brush. So I'm not into the slow stuff. And this goes all the way out on this edge, quite dark. And on this edge as well. And there's some fairly dark in the middle, not as dark. Rinsing my brush. I'm just going to soften all those edges, and that might be enough for this leaf. It's in the background. It doesn't need to be a perfect leaf. Now these leaves over here are quite in the shadow, and so they're very dark. And they don't even show up much. Got a big handprint there, so that needs a little bit of fixing. It usually pays to stand back and look at your painting, get a feeling for what you're doing and if you're still getting it right, and I haven't done that for a while here. This leaf actually shows quite blue in the picture, but again, it's part of the background. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna make it the yellow-green. So the way that I soften edges is just by rubbing along the edge. And I follow with a tissue so that the colors just don't run. And see how much softer that is than right there? This looks like the flower was cut off and pasted onto this background. Now you can use a smaller brush than this if you have a greater contrast, you'd want to use a smaller brush, or you're going to have your colors all going together. Where you can just really stay on the edge. And I do that, I'll do that the whole way around, but look at the difference between there and there. It just looks like it's more a part of nature. All right, one last thing that I want to do is define this leaf and then go back and get some of my depth, fix errors, etc. So I'm going to need some yellow, some rust. So in here, I want it to go all the way back to the leaf, not have white in there. And get some of this darker area in here so that this petal has a lot more depth. Mixing a little bit of blue with it too, so And then right here, it has another area that goes back quite a bit. Just wetting my brush and bringing some of that up, but trying to leave a lighter edge here. All right, I am going to take the tape off. I always, after I take the tape off, I look at things and tweak them a little bit. Look at it from a distance or just walk by it, and you'll notice little things that don't look quite right, and you can fix them. And that's a part of every single painting that I do. There you have a yellow flower. If you liked this video, please hit the subscribe button and the bell and the like. And I'd love to hear from you, so send me some comments. Tell me how it goes when you try this flower. And thank you so much for watching.